intended for mature audiences.
Fruity's revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is January 21st, 2026. So, Trump is, I believe he's still delivering his speech at Davos, which was subdued and pointed. We're going to talk about a few things today. Got over 35 headlines to get through. One of the top stories today, Virginia. Abigail Spanberger was recently, I believe yesterday, sworn in. She didn't waste much time to undo all the things that Governor Glenn Youngkin had done and return the state to the rightful hands of the CIA and return them en route to socialism. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. All right, well, I got a little late start today because I was watching Trump's address at Davos, where he is holding the elite to account for their pursuant goals of the New World Order that sidelines America and the United States supremacy. And I've explained this before. It's all about individual liberties. You can't have an authoritarian technocracy globally if you have one of the strongest countries in the world guaranteeing its citizens and its residents individual liberties. So we're going to get into all this and more. Over 35 headlines to get through. So let's read the news. So I'm a little disjointed today because I was wasting too much time watching. I was watching Donald Trump there on the news, his address, and I sort of lost track of time there. So we are going to be going out of order, or not in order, so you're going to have to bear with me here. Let's start with Virginia, and this is telling. Just the News is reporting Pam Bondi says Lindsay Halligan is stepping aside as U.S. Attorney in Virginia. Bondi said Tuesday night that Lindsay Halligan is stepping down from her role as top prosecutor in Virginia just hours after a federal judge barred her from masquerading as a U.S. attorney for the state's Eastern District. Halligan assumed the post in his acting capacity last year and speedily brought a criminal case against former FBI Director James Comey, who challenged her qualifications for the post. to bring the case. Also, you have to understand what I just talked about is Abigail Spanberger, who's ex-CIA, always CIA, is now heading the state, and they're not going to go up against the governor and the state and presumably the CIA. The judge Tuesday barred Halligan from representing herself as U.S. Attorney for the U.S. Eastern District of Virginia unless she secured Senate confirmation for her court appointment. And so what we're talking about here is the fact that this happened to Alina Habba, also in New Jersey, is Trump wanted to get his people in, and what happened was he knew they wouldn't survive Senate confirmation, so he put them in as deputies. Then he removed the person there who was the Attorney General or the Attorney General, a U.S. Attorney of that state. And so by default, the deputy takes over on an interim basis as a way of getting around confirmation. So now the second attorney has been removed by another federal judge. Halligan is also now the second, as I just said, major Trump loyalist to resign over judicial orders blocking them from the post because they're not confirmed. And they knew they wouldn't survive confirmation, so that they didn't even go through that process. New York Post is reporting Danish lawmaker, this was yesterday, cut off, scolded after telling President Trump to fuck off during a meeting at Davos. It's actually an EU meeting. Also from the New York Post, Minnesota officials, including Walsh and Frey, accused of hindering ICE, served with grand jury subpoena. So I'm going to have to take a second here because we're going to be a little disjointed today. So you're going to have to bear with me. The FBI has served Minnesota officials, including Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, with grand jury subpoenas for allegedly conspiring to hinder ICE operations in the state. The subpoenas are requesting records, communications from officials as anti-ICE protests roil the Twin Cities nearly 2 weeks after Renee Good was shot by an agent after she clipped him with her SUV. And we have more information coming up regarding Renee Good and her relationship. The subpoenas are reportedly part of a federal investigation to alleged conspiracy to coerce and obstruct federal law enforcement operations during the Department of Homeland Security Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota. Coming up next from the Associated Press, U.S. forces seize 7th sanctioned tanker linked to Venezuela in Trump's effort to control its oil. U.S. Southern Command said in a social media post that U.S. forces apprehended the motor vessel Zakita without incident and that the tanker was operated in defiance of President Donald Trump's established quarantine of sanctioned vessels in the Caribbean. I'm going to skip this story. There was a New York Times story about white students hurt by LA desegregation policy. So there are some people with the 1776 Project Foundation who are suing LA over their desegregation policies, even though those schools remain really segregated. They're saying that it hurts white students. All right, back in Europe and especially in Switzerland, where Davos has taken place, in Davos, Switzerland. It is the Davos. If you didn't know anything about what happens at Davos, Davos is the annual World Economic Forum meeting, and that is just the public face of what is known as the Bilderberg Group, where titans of industry, corporations, the leaders of the corporate fascism and their cronies and other state officials and heads of state. I think Trump blew off the first two Davos summits of his first term, but he found that he couldn't resist the press coverage and the fact that he is able to dress down the leaders of the New World Order agenda, etc., which is all meant and set to weaken the United States. In any case, story from the New York Post: Swiss agitators torch U.S. flag, target American businesses ahead of Trump's visit to Davos. Also from UK Metro, this is what I reported at the top of the broadcast. Trump's Air Force One made emergency U-turn with president on board. Donald Trump's Air Force One was plunged into darkness and forced to U-turn in midair en route to a crucial summit in Switzerland. That's the World Economic Forum in Davos. When it suffered an electrical fault, the crew of the modified Boeing 747-200B made the call to abort the journey less than an hour into the flight and then headed back to the United States. I believe this was sabotage. So the reasoning being is the heat between the EU, which is the seat of the world government, even though the UN headquarters is in Manhattan, it's really an EU plan. Matter of fact, European Union was a Nazi plan, but I don't want to digress into that. But the problem with the EU, and we're going to get into that in just a second, is that it's a supranational organization that's to some degree unelected. I mean, you can put your representatives in there from your said country, but they don't really have any power. And the whole object of the European Union, that bloc, is to undermine state sovereignty, which is done successfully in the decades since it's been founded. Here's another New York Times thing I don't think I want to get into either. Cuban immigrant was killed in ICE custody. Family is going to sue. Geraldo Lunas Campos said a witness saw him choked by guards. And I'm not really going to get into this because it's disputed, and so we really don't know. DHS is saying he committed suicide. Witnesses, I don't know how the New York Times or other people get to witnesses in the detention facility. It's really not clear. I think this is all coming secondhand from the family, and it has not been corroborated. And obviously the witnesses haven't been attributed, so we don't know who said what or what have you. In any case, as I always say, if you're resisting arrest by prison, facility guards or law enforcement in any context, and they have to restrain you and you die in custody, well, that's your fault. Actively, maliciously choking somebody, yeah, I don't know. It'll be investigated, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole at this point. Here's something I want to get into, though. I need to address this with another story here because, as I said, I'm totally out of order today. So the article is from CNBC. Danish pension fund to sell $100 million in U.S. treasuries, citing poor U.S. government finances. Danish pension operator said it is exiting U.S. treasuries over finance concerns tied to American budget shortfall. So this is a big problem. So if you didn't know, a lot of America's debt is held by foreign countries, specifically China, but a lot from the EU. And any adversary of the United States could hurt the United States by dumping U.S. treasuries. The Chinese said they wouldn't do that if there was a war. Of course they would. Or they might down the road somewhere. Just saying they wouldn't do it is something else entirely. But the Europeans also said they wouldn't do it, and So now the Danish pension fund is indeed going to sell U.S. treasuries, which is indeed problematic if it is a signal. Zero Hedge says, no, Europe is not about to sell its U.S. treasuries en masse. En masse is the key word there. We don't know what they're going to do if they become our enemies. If you know anything about the conspiracy, it is absolutely true that what we're talking about here is indeed adversaries of the United States. Adversaries of the United States, how? Adversaries of the values brought up in the Enlightenment, and dare I say, from Christian humanism, which sort of declared that every human has value, has a spark of God inside you, etc. I like to say a spark of divinity is that God, whatever. I'm not going to debate religion here, but what I am saying is that the idea that everybody has value and then is endowed with certain liberties from their creator, which is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, this individual liberty thing is not something that is conducive to an authoritarian world government. And people say, oh, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. Is it? It isn't, because it goes that way. Every time you give the power back to these people, Spanberger with the CIA, and if you didn't know, the CIA promotes communism. You just have to look into it a little bit more. And that the intelligence agencies want a world government because communism, socialism is a means of control. It's a velvet glove approach in a lot of instances where they give you things. And so you think that those people are your benefactors, and then they're going to turn around and do something awful to you because you want the free goodies. But then your whole freedom, let's say your whole life in a free country, overnight is undermined. Here's another story here. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Americans who are going a whole month without buying anything. Now, this is the first time I heard of this. Google searches for no buy January have hit a 5-year high as Gen Zers and millennials sign up for the thrifty challenge. I like this idea, but I'm sort of involved in a dry January, so I'm not going to be buying liquor, but I don't know if I could not drink and not buy anything. Like anything? Like not even food? I don't know how you do that. Do you stock up before the month? I don't know if I could do that. Non-essentials, buy non-essentials maybe. I'm all for boycotts and pushing back on consumerism. I think this is a good idea, but I think if you target it as a boycott, you really put the power back into the hands of the consumer. More Wall Street Journal. Chinese EVs blow past Tesla and tariffs en route to global reign. U.S., European Union, and Mexico try to quash accelerated demand for China's hottest electric vehicles. I disagree with all this. I don't. The BYD. First of all, if you know anything about Chinese products, they all have surveillance inside. So putting BYD on the road of America is a terribly bad idea. Canada just signed a deal with China to allow BYD and other models, electric car models, to invade Canada. So they'll soon be coming across the border. The New World Order and everybody that is into that agenda, the European Union, etc., Canada, Australia, they're all giving in to what is supposed to be a Chinese century. But Donald Trump is standing in the way. And mind you, he's only going to be there for 3 years. What are we going to do after? So the best thing is to prepare for what's coming. because this New World Order agenda is coming. And as I said yesterday, New World Order agenda is just a term. It means the turning over of the old world order. Fox News, Mexico flies 37 cartel members to U.S. under pressure from the Trump administration. Security Minister of Mexico, Omar Garcia Harfuch, calls detainees high-impact criminals who pose threat to country security. Not just Mexico's security, but the United States security, without a doubt. More from Fox News. Top Trump administration education officials exposes blue state financial aid fraud offenders. Undersecretary of Education Nicholas Kent points to notable levels of fraud in California and Minnesota. A pair of blue states are among the worst for federal student aid fraud as officials crack down on scammers who are exploiting the taxpayer-funded programs. In 2025, the Department of Education said it prevented $1 billion of fraud in the aid programs. Under Secretary of Education Nicholas Kent said that these schemes are not only wasted taxpayer money, but also disproportionately affect low-income students trying to pay for their education. We talked about California being certainly a hub of fraud, waste, and abuse, but we also see Minnesota as an example. Moving on to more news from Fox News. Bill and Hillary Clinton at risk of contempt after snubbing Epstein depositions. Committee says former president possesses first-hand information about Epstein and Maxwell's effort to curry favor with influential individuals. The House Oversight Committee will consider whether to tee up House-wide vote on holding former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress on Wednesday morning for missing their scheduled depositions in the House's Epstein probe. Bill Clinton refused to appear for a scheduled deposition. President Clinton's unwillingness to comply with the subpoena, even after the Oversight Committee agreed to postpone his deposition date at his request for nearly a month, has substantially interfered with the Oversight Committee's investigation, so they say. They're not going to appear because they're going to be made a mockery of him because now he's old and he's afraid there's going to be some sort of slip. So more about Virginia. I was going to lump all these articles together, but you're going to have to bear with me here. Just the news. Dillon threatens lawsuit over Virginia bill favoring female minority government contractors over white men. The bill, which would establish a small business procurement enhancement program, was pre-filled last month by State Delegate Gian Ward before the state legislature began its new session last week. SWAM stands for Small Women-Owned and Minority-Owned Businesses. They wasted no time to return Virginia to its road to socialism because that's what the CIA wants, because socialism is a form of control. We have more news from Just the News. Trump with large American contingent will likely to make waves at biggest ever World Economic Forum. If you didn't know what was going on here, so this is the largest attendance for Davos in history, which is interesting. Are they looking to curry favor with Trump? Maybe. But Trump is going to make mincemeat out of them because, as he did previously in his previous term when he went to the last two in his or last one, I forget it was one or two in his first term. He brought him to task, as they should. But this time it's going to be more contentious because they don't want to work with Trump, Greenland being the focus. And I had this conversation with my brother yesterday, is that he made a big deal about Greenland, like all leftists do. Oh, it's a big deal. But I told him, I go, it's a troll. And I go, and when they bite at the troll, he has a way of really tweaking them and using it to advantage, and it's exactly what he did. Is Greenland beneficial to the U.S. national security? Of course it is. And I had to school my brother and say, hey, you know, this isn't the first time the U.S. has tried to acquire Greenland. So it's not like he's pulling this out of thin air. The last time it was done, I believe, was by Truman in a secret acquisition proposal to Denmark of $100 million worth of gold. This is right after, I believe this is when we had all the gold that we eventually repatriated to the European states, which then gave it back to us to pay for the Marshall Plan. In any case, going back to the article, Trump is bringing what is reportedly the biggest ever American contingent, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. The theme for this year's meeting is a spirit of dialogue following a year in which the Trump restructured the U.S. trade agreements and reshaped relationships with Europe and others, how American foreign relations will emerge from the 2026 forum, and how Trump will attempt to resolve certain looming questions, including Greenland, remain uncertain. Well, it doesn't really remain uncertain after you see some of the speech. He laid it out pretty succinctly, and he was pretty sedate. But as I said before, is the Davos is the precursor for the Bilderberg group. Now, the Bilderberg meeting is where the biggest parts of the conspiracy, business leaders and state leaders, leaders in media, all different types of leaders that are even more elite than what you see at Davos, the elite of the elite, after Davos, bring to Bilderberg all the things they learned in Davos. And what Trump has already said, which is clear, is he's using the leverage of the United States economic might, certainly military might as well, to leverage against the adversaries and the conspirators of this New World Order agenda, you know, getting rid of freedom and really destroying what America was built on. He's using this, and rightfully so. And he told them pretty much straight out, he's like, you couldn't, and the reason he's using tariffs is because we hold all the cards. Our economy is bigger than all the European nations combined. What he's going to do, unfortunately, is force Europe into the hands of the Chinese communists. It's already happening, rightfully so. And this happened with Canada already. So now that the sides are going to become clear, then we could have the real battle. And the reason he's forcing this out in the open is because he only has 4 years. And the American people will be divided as well, because the people that are fighting for climate change and for trans rights and all these other things don't really know what side they're on. They're on the side of the communists. And it's going to be made perfectly clear. And hopefully then that people will come to the side of America, because that's really what we need, is people that say, hey, I like freedom, period. And not worry about all these other things like, is the government somehow benefiting me or helping me? You're supposed to be helping yourself. God helps those who help themselves. So, trying to expose some of the things that happened that actually the Biden administration put in stark relief is how bad the United States government, the administration, can actually be when the socialists are in charge, which is basically, it wasn't really Joe Biden, it was the people behind Joe Biden, which is the New World Order. They cheated to get him in. Why? Because they couldn't have Trump again, because Trump was ruining their agenda and destroying the narrative, which is happening day by day during his second term. Okay. Just the news, Biden's FBI paid anti-Trump sedition hunters as informants in J6 Arctic frost probes. A memo shows the Biden era FBI made more than $100,000 in payments to informants who were members of an anonymous group of tech sleuths known as sedition hunters. Just have to interject here a little bit. The sedition hunters were not all American citizens. A lot of them were in Germany, but also the UK, that were supposed to be just concerned citizens that really turned out to be a lot of intelligence folks. But they were also crazy leftists, awful people, affluent, white, urban, liberal. Female, urban liberals. Okay. That because there was a couple news pieces done on these that showed these housewives, looking at footage from January 6th and using face recognition to try to find out who these people were. Supposedly. It turns out a lot of it was just foreign intelligence. And that's what the liberals have planned for. And we're going to see this in just a second. The liberals have plans for all the conservatives and MAGA. There's not going to be a reconciliation if the Democrats take power. There is going to be a hunting down. First of all, a restoration, as you see what's happening in Virginia, a restoration of what Joe Biden had did. So expect more inflation and more nonsense. But also what Joe Biden did is a hunting down of MAGA conservatives, and you're going to see people put in jail, for sure. It's going to be out of control. Because the New World Order, this new agenda, this new world agenda, is supposed to start on Christmas 2030. So after Trump leaves office in 28, there are 2 years that are going to be pretty hellish. So mark my words. Okay, back to the article. The payments are due to be disclosed by FBI Director Kash Patel to Congress, along with the acknowledged concerns that Christopher Wray, his bureau, approval of certain members of the sedition hunters as confidential human sources may have violated bureau policies in the Domestic Investigation and Operations Guide concerning information bias, information secrecy, foreign influence, and contracting. One of the earliest emails from the FBI Washington's field office oversaw the work showed the FBI was clearly aware the group had foreign connections and may actually be using software from overseas to identify American citizens for arrest. We have sedition hunters from the United Kingdom running facial recognition software. And like I said, it's like MI6 posing as British civilians, and the same thing in Germany with people claiming just to be civilians were actually with the BND. And also working with these people were United States liberal housewives. Goes on to say officials said sedition hunter member was also engaged as an FBI confidential human source in the summer of 2023, receiving $20,000 in payments in the Arctic frost probe. The source was specifically tasked with looking for video evidence tying Trump supporters who attended the president's January 6th speech on the ellipse to subsequent riot at the Capitol. To fix something else here. Yeah, what do you expect? I mean, I don't expect much from liberals, to be plainly honest with you. Usually they're misinformed. I don't want to say disinformed. They're misinformed. And it's unfortunate because they think they're informed, which in itself is dangerous. So all these also with the sedition hunters, the payments, the $20,000 payment was discussed by Raymond Hussler and Assistant Special Counsel Julia Gegenheimer with Special Counsel Jack Smith. So, of course, he is the headhunter for conservatives. It wasn't just going after Trump. He was going after everybody, every politician aligned with Trump, and, of course, all the electorate, all the constituency of Trump. They wanted to try a purge because they knew that Donald Trump was going to run again. That was the whole thing between trying to get him up on charges and all these different ways to bring charges against him and hoping that at least one would stick. And they all failed ultimately. Most specifically was the one with the Mar-a-Lago that they said he committed fraud or something, and they found him. He was guilty on 36 counts when the prosecutor and the judge specifically told the jury, if you find him guilty on one count, you have to find him guilty on all 36. And that's why it was really the same charge over and over again, but it sounds more impressive. He was, found guilty on 36 counts. It was all the same thing. And then you go to the E. Jean Carroll thing, and that wasn't a criminal case of rape. They just assumed the rape occurred, which is weird in how they did that, to find him liable for defamation because he called her crazy when she was indeed crazy. All right, more from the Just the News. GSA announced $60 billion in federal contract savings in Trump's first year. No surprise there. More from Just the News. Trump highlights top 3 accomplishments from his first year of second term. I think the building of a really powerful military has been a great achievement, and that would include the Venezuela thing. That would include the attack on Iran and wiping out the nuclear threat. I think that's really amazing what we've done militarily, but also he told reporters the biggest accomplishments were rebuilding the United States military, securing major investment, and attaining most favored nation pricing for prescription drugs. And nobody, no liberals want to give him any credit, which just shows how diluted the narrative is. Like in politics in the days of yore, usually folks would indeed give kudos to a politician from the other party or someone they didn't vote for if they had some success, policy success. Never happens with Trump. Many people have said always, if Trump cured cancer, the Democrats and liberals, progressives would be on the side of cancer. So this brings us to our other big story, and I really have to put these together also. Let me just show you the headline first, though. National Review, China hawks baffled at Britain's decision to approve massive Chinese embassy in London. Well, what's the problem with this? The problem is this is a sellout to, it's a sellout to the Chinese communists because supposedly it's a listening post that is next to a very sensitive area in London. Here it is. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have everything disjointed here. It's kind of, I got too involved in watching Trump because I know how important this is. Because if you know really what the dichotomy is, who the real enemy is, it's not just the Chinese communists, because the Chinese communists were put into power by the CIA when they double-crossed Chiang Kai-shek. Why would they do that? It's the same thing if you asked how the communists of the Soviets took over Russia. Same principle. And don't forget that communism isn't Russian. It's not Chinese. It's European. It's German, actually. It's actually French. It was born out of the French Revolution. And I'm not going to digress too much into that. But the enemies are indeed in Europe. They're the ones that Marx was German, Engels was German, and Engels was the son of an industrialist. And when his father died, he took control of the factories. And he didn't give shares to the workers or anything like that. He sold the factories for a profit, and he kept all the money. He didn't give it to his workers or anything. In any case, America-China hawks are baffled by the United Kingdom's decision to allow China to build an enormous embassy in the heart of London despite potential national security risks. Not potential, definite. They're just surrendering. And you were wondering why in the United Kingdom you were having all these draconian laws around free speech. Because the model is the Chinese Communist model. And even there was a report just yesterday that Miami police detectives showed up at this woman's house for something she posted online about the mayor. Supposedly anti-Semitic or something like that. Whatever it was, it's a fucking internet post. And it's not even a direct threat. Like if you say, I'm going to go murder somebody or murder the president or whatever, and that person's arrested. I get that. But just saying that the mayor of Miami tacitly approved the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza or something like that, that doesn't warrant a visit by police detectives. But obviously those detectives were ordered by the police chief who was ordered by the mayor. You have to understand the chain of command, and that's why you have what's going on in Minneapolis. You have that happening because the mayor, Jacob Fry, controls the police chief who controls the police. And Fry very likely is controlled by Tim Walz, and they've both been subpoenaed as well. And this is not subpoenaed by Oversight Committee. This is subpoenaed by the FBI, which is way different. This is investigating criminal conspiracy, rightfully so. Well, moving on to this next article here from Zero Hedge. Despite mass protests of citizens, UK approves controversial Chinese mega embassy in London. So its own citizens were protesting this. They did it anyway. Why? Because they have to move the agenda along. Mark my word. Mark my word, it's happening. And it's going to happen here in the United States if you're not careful. Because people that grow up in the United States just think, you go anywhere in the world, you have the same freedoms. I don't think so. Even in Italy, when I was in Rome, I went to take pictures of some building. I don't think I even knew what it was, but I went to take pictures. The Carbonari came out and nearly took my head off. Anyway. One American News CNN report, Walz was questioned whether he was an agent for China during Harris's VP vetting process. And this follows on, well, I'll just get into the article here. We know Walz is a Chinese agent, specifically for the reasons I just stated. We're moving to soft socialism because that was supposed to be the transition that was most amenable to the American mindset. But any transition to socialism is a bad idea. We already have a robust social safety net. Why you would want to increase that by taking away people's rights, and we're going to get into that more. In any case, according to CNN report, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was specifically asked by then Vice President Kamala Harris' team whether he had ever served as an agent for the Chinese Communist government. Would he say he was? This follows similar revelations about Governor Josh Shapiro, who detailed in his 2025 memoir being questioned about potential status as a foreign agent for Israel, given his pro-Zionist views and his Jewish heritage. At the first Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro admitted to be surprised and slightly offended by the query. You think? In 1989, immediately following the Tiananmen Square protest, Walz traveled to Foshan in the Guangdong province. He was part of the first group of American educators sent to the region through World Teach, a nonprofit program then affiliated with Harvard University's Institute for International Development. Whatever. You got to cloak it in all these scholastic, overeducated terms. It's ridiculous. Quite so. We all know where it's going. We all know the world agenda. It's evident everywhere. AI, humanoid robotics, it's all coming to the fore. And the acquiescence to China, obviously, which is, supposed to be masking the true intent, but we all know what's happening there. And they're worried about Trump upsetting the agenda. And so they're jumping the shark, so to speak. In any case, moving on to the next article. PJ Media, sorry to break up your narrative about Renee Good, lefties, but I got some news. If you look closely, however, the story is changing. The narrative about Good's later in life lesbian marriage is quickly evaporating, given an old Irish goodbye by the news media. That doesn't mean the media have corrected the record, but they have begun to quietly make the inaccurate portrayal of her marital status disappear. Thanks to independent journalist Julie Kelly, we learned that not only was Good not married to her lesbian partner, but she legally changed her name to match her paramour's last name, not through marriage, but via old-fashioned name change. Renee Good petitioned for a name change in 2023 so she could share the same last name as her partner. So Becca Good is not her wife. I'm very suspect of things and names, particularly how a woman who was supposedly shot by an ICE agent, how her last name is Good. And then there's a release of a new Wizard of Oz thing, Wicked for Good. You understand the psychological effect that may have on people doing terrible things for good, for Renee Good? Why she becomes a martyr when her last name is Good? I don't believe in coincidence. I find it too coincidental to not be at least thought about. All right, going back to Virginia, like I said, I'm sorry, this is out of order. The Federalist taxing lawnmowers, gym passes, and DoorDash proves Dems actually hate affordability. Why? Affordability carried the day until Democrats actually got into office, and you should be worried about this come November. Within weeks of Election Day, Virginia Democrats have made it clear that affordability was never more than a campaign slogan. Indeed, Spanberger turns Virginia governor's race into a test of Trump's economy, said Politico's Aaron Doherty, and Brankton Booker wrote, on the 29th of 2025, Spanberger has stuck to a message on the economy, specifically the cost for Virginians. It's going to get worse. And the inflation, and mind you, the inflation wasn't Trump's fault. The cost of living increases were all Biden's fault, Democrats' fault, liberals' fault. Liberal in the sense of spending liberally. Abigail Spanberger beat incumbent Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Series, who I thought was fabulous. While Democrats picked up seats in the state legislature, a post-election poll conducted by CBS News found that the economy voters voted for Abigail Spanberger over Winsome Earl-Series by more than 20 points where the economy was concerned. Not saying the economy was good. What I'm saying, had nothing to do with the Republicans or Trump. It had to do with Biden. So you vote in the same party that caused the affordability problem in the first place. How are people so stupid? Can anybody tell me? People are, the electorate is basically uneducated or miseducated, misinformed. That's misinformation because they believe information that isn't correct because it's part of the narrative. It's not disinformation. That's intelligence speak for specifically seeding the information space data with wrong information to get somebody to believe something different. I don't think the news media isn't engaged in that. They just misinform people by removing points of information that would be helpful to build understanding, specifically to misinform people or to tell them right out lies. In any case, House Bill 978 would dramatically expand Virginia's sale and use tax to cover a ton of everyday services. Under the bill, taxes would be applied to gym memberships and fitness classes, dry cleaning, laundry service, pet care, home repairs and cleaning service, car repairs, delivery and shipping services, digital services, and event planning. Right. And the thing is, they don't care because Trump's in office for 3 more years. You follow? So as things get more expensive for Virginians, they're just going to blame Trump. But raise tax revenue in the meantime. And where does that tax revenue go? It greases their electorate, their donors, and themselves. See Ilhan Omar. House Bill 881 would provide that any locality with a population density of at least 2,500 persons per square mile may, by ordinance, prohibit or regulate the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Here we go again with this shit. It's just, we had that issue in one of the, in the other end of the county where I live. Rich people who employ people 24/7 to clean up their estates, their lawns, were complaining because these landscape contractors were disturbing their weekend. So they outlawed the use of gas-powered leaf blowers on the weekends. It's crazy. Anyway, proposed legislation, Bill 900, would add a retail and use tax on any county or city is a member of the Northern Virginia Transportation Committee Commission at a rate of 0.385%. Any county or city that is embraced by the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, but that is not a member of the Northern Virginia Commission, at the rate of 0.615%, a retail delivery fee in the amount of 20 cents upon each retail delivery, and a regional highway use tax fee on all vehicles in the Commonwealth that are not subject to existing highway fee. Spanberger announced that Virginia would be rejoining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin removed the state from in 2021. The Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative raises Virginia's electricity taxes as admitted by the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council. Virginians are fucked. Are they just too stupid? We got more from the Federalist, though. SCOTUS scolds Hawaii for regulating Americans' Second Amendment rights to second-class status. You're regulating the Second Amendment to second-class status, said Justice Alito. And we talked about this yesterday. By making the universe of places where a permit holder can actually carry a handgun exceptionally narrow, because what they did in Hawaii is said any public space, you have to have permission by the owner of that public space or private space. You know what I mean? So it doesn't work. Chief Justice John Roberts probed Hawaii's attorney, Neil Katyal, about the Aloha State's apparent willingness to treat American Second Amendment right as lesser than other constitutionally protected freedoms. He specifically highlighted concerns expressed in the court's prior decision that the Second Amendment was often been treated as disfavored and second-level right. Hold on. Sorry about that. It bouncing around as well. We're back to Virginia. Democrats want more rapists and murderers on the streets in a move that has not only shocked anyone, but except those who were psyoped into believing Governor Abigail Spanberger was a moderate. Democrats are poised to make life a little easier for rapists and murderers. Legislative proposals have been streaming in. many of which aim to ban guns, rig elections, disenfranchise Virginians, kill unborn babies, and tax just about everything under the sun, as we've already just explained. But one proposal championed by Democrat delegate Ray Cousins would eliminate mandatory minimum sentences for rape, manslaughter, assaulting law enforcement, of course, ahead of any ICE incursion into Virginia, the possession and distribution of child pornography, and repeat violent offenders. There's more from the Federalist. Jennifer Welsh. If you didn't know about this, Jennifer Welsh was that podcaster from That's It or I've Had It. I think it's I've Had It. Irrational, Insensate, and Dangerous is the Democratic Party. As I've often mentioned, I don't like Jennifer Welsh. I don't like the I've Had It podcast. All it is as the Federalist explains, is women, affluent, awful women, affluent, white, urban, female liberals. And they're misinformed, uneducated about policy, and pissed off. Democrats want retribution and are increasingly uninterested in disguising it with any form of pretense about laws or morality. And this is what I'm going to get into, which is not going to be reconciliation when the Dems come into office, but is going to be, in fact, retribution. So when the Dems come into office, probably in 2028, I don't even want to predict that because of how scary it is. They're not just going to come after every friggin' MAGA, Trump-aligned politician and donor, but every constituency of Donald Trump's. It's going to be January 6th investigation on steroids. Jennifer Welsh, the gaunt, puckered up nag who hosts a popular podcast and who is now proudly displays on a regular basis just how dark and decayed the left's collective soul has become. This is from the Federalist. It's been fairly obvious for some time that the chief aims of the Democrat Party are to crush the independent American middle class and eliminate the nuclear family. They hate both with equal passion, but until recently, generally speaking, those goals were at least disguised with lies about climate change, equity, and our democracy. Now it's common for Democrats to drop all pretense and simply express their hatred outright. Excuse me. For anyone with a different political opinion. That's Welsh exhibiting. Hold on. Yeah, I don't like those sounds. Sorry about that. Oh, it's a delivery. Like I hear someone at the door, and I don't know if they were touching the door or whatever, but I have an alarm there, so. That was that sound. In any case, back to the story, that's Welch exhibiting all the distilled irrationality and sulfuric acid contained in the average modern Democrat, but without any effort to conceal or pass it off as some intense form of empathy. And as I said many times before, compassion is the weak link in the righteous. And the evildoers, the heathen has figured out a way to exploit that kink in the armor, that compassion. And so they try to pass off heinous criminality as people that we should be empathetic with or sympathetic for. Just not the case. And Welsh is the worst because she is like the template of these types of people. Welch continued, because I believe that this is my opinion, of course, that Trump and all the bottom-feeding morons surrounding him and Elon Musk and all the bottom-feeding clinger-oneers Klinger honors, surrounding him. I think they commit crimes every day. Uh-oh. And I think to reconcile all of this is going to take a hardcore, not integrity Democrats, but fuck you Democrats. Fuck you for fucking over the country, she said. We're all serious about this. We are prosecuting. We are going to uncover every document, every phone call, everything you did. We will be relentless about it. And that's the mindset we've got to have, because I think the electorate is going from what we've got Trump out, but also we want accountability. There it is. There's the problem. There is the revenge tour, the retribution. They're going to come after everybody who's conservative, moderately so, or said they like Trump, or you see what they did. I mean, she talked about Musk there. You see what they did to Teslas, the keying of Teslas, the burning of dealerships and cars. It's fucking out of control. Out of control. And it's not going to end without Trump being in office and his legacy being continued after he leaves in 2028. Because otherwise, it's going to be a shitstorm. Big shit sandwich, and we're all going to have to take a bite. More from the Federalist. Raffensperger's Georgia election gaslighting must end. And this is just a testament to the uniparty. Raffensperger, who's a Republican, has chosen deflection and denial instead of assisting the Justice Department in cleaning Georgia's voter rolls. Uniparty. Just last month, Fulton County, Georgia's most populous county, admitted that approximately 315,000 early ballots in 2020 election were counted without the required poll worker signatures, a clear and direct violation of state regulations. County officials have further acknowledged that they do not dispute that those ballots were improperly certified. Fucking A. Raffensperger refused to provide the records, arguing that doing so would require releasing sensitive personal information. Bullshit. A voter is a voter is a voter. It's not like your health records are there. They claim the Justice Department disputes, of course, noting that the federal law permits review of voter rolls with appropriate safeguards in place. The law is clear. States need to give us this information so we can do our duty to protect American citizens from vote dilution, which, of course, this is, says Harmeet Dillon. Today's filings show that regardless of which party is in charge of the particular state, the Department of Justice will firmly stand on the side of election integrity and transparency. Indeed. It's already 11:05 Eastern Standard Time, so we need to move quite a bit faster. This is just another thing from the post-millennial about the Trump DOJ subpoenas for Wallace and Frey. Minnesota's officials are for conspiring to impede federal law enforcement. We know this is to be true. Also for the post-millennial, Minnesota Attorney General falsely claims the FACE Act only prevents protests at abortion clinics. He is not up on the law. It also applies to houses of worship. He said, so how they are stretching either of these laws to apply to people protested in a church over the behavior of a religious leader is beyond me. He doesn't know the fucking law. Because that law was amended by conservatives to say, well, your religion is abortion, so our religion is religion. So if you're gonna put this law on your house of worship, we're gonna put it on ours. More for the post-millennial. State Department cut $1.8 billion in spending during 2025. The Trump administration works tirelessly to serve the American people as efficiently and effectively as possible. And that's $1.8 billion. I'm not sure if that's part of the $80 billion that the Trump administration said they saved in contracting in 2025. In 1 year. Mind you, this is just 1 year. So I have this next article coming up from Zero Hedge. We're almost at the end here, so we're doing pretty good. Just another word on that. What is wrong with saving $80 billion? I mean, if you're a conservative, you like that. I mean, we really need to cut spending now. Is this going to affect the national debt? It's hard to say. It seems like it's going up. But if the tariff income is applied to the national debt, that might help people. But it's certainly lowering the trade deficit, which is important for the economy, because we have to get the economy rolling. And once it's rolling, then we could really start to figure out how we could take the proceeds from growth and put them towards debt. But I've been clear all along that Trump isn't much of a conservative. He likes to spend money. I don't know if he likes to save money. In any case, Zero Hedge, after Trump meeting, Slovak Prime Minister Fico says EU is not taken seriously by world leaders. They're not, because everybody sees the EU as a supranational organization looked at undermining state sovereignty. And with this renewed nationalist fervor, not just in Europe, not just in the West and the United States, but everywhere, people look at supranational organizations, whether it's the EU or the UN, as corrupt because all the things they promised since 1950 haven't transpired. And don't forget that the UN isn't new. There was a League of Nations before that, and that was disbanded. It's the same thing with people had problems with central banks. Then the central banks come in and they go, oh, we're going to fix things and make things better. And they make things worse and they're corrupt. And people say, oh, we now got to get rid of that shit. And then once it's there, you can't get rid of it. How'd we do? Oh, pretty good. Minutes, an hour and 6 minutes. So we went over 35 news stories today. A couple snafus there, but it's okay. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode. I'm here every day, Monday through Friday, live stream at 10 a.m., covering the most news within an hour or so. I've been going over and too much. Yesterday it was an hour and 15 minutes. Or check me out on social media, Getter, Facebook, True Social, Minds, Substack. Thanks again for joining me today. May have an episode of Tuesdays with Perry tonight. We go live at 9:15. We usually go live 9:15 on Tuesday, but I had a meeting last night that I had to take care of. So check us out. Live stream 9:15 tonight. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically, so stay hip to that trick. All right. Respect.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.